Now we're not going to have to worry about any of the lights in the back here. They're all in the correct location. The class light orientation here on the back SP light cluster plate is correct. The class lights are fine. They're completely flat. They're just molded pieces, so all I'll have to do later on is put some BLMA parts on there to cover those up later on. So the next big step here is something that might be a little bit controversial for a couple people, because I know a lot of people don't like affecting the way the locomotive runs and stuff like that. It's addressing the tower gear issue. As I said, we have these nice see-through grills, but we have the giant tower gear for the truck in the way. We're going to remove that in this process. So again, if any of you don't like this, don't bother leaving comments. I'm going to do it. If you don't like this step, you don't have to do it. This is my model. I know how these things run. I've done the modification before. They run fine. I run these as permanent trailing B units anyway. In the modern day, they're not used running in the front of a train. They're just trailing power, if they're even around. So the modification I'm going to do, like I said, is going to basically eliminate the power on this rear truck, but we're still going to be able to remount the truck, and it's still going to be able to stay in place, and I'll show you how to do the modification here. The first thing we got to do is take out the coupler boxes on both ends here, like these guys here. That's what we're going to be removing. Now that we've removed the coupler boxes, we can go ahead and very carefully pry the shell up off the frame. Remember that we have these light bulbs in here that we got to be careful of. We have tons of wiring in the front. The rear half of these locomotives usually sticks pretty good, but you just got to be kind of careful. Lift it out. As you can see, it's pretty simple. Okay, so if you'll notice, I've disconnected the leads from the trucks off the board here. I've disconnected these and I've removed the plugs, set those aside. These are going to stay on the truck. We're not going to get rid of this. The truck will still be picking up the current from the rails. It's just not going to be powered anymore after this. So you can see we removed the wire couplings, and the wires themselves are just basically sitting here. So what we're going to do next, we need to basically remove this weight temporarily, and I'm using a Phillips small jeweler's screwdriver for this. Okay, so I've went ahead and removed the drive worm, and we're left with the truck here. We're just going to go ahead and unpin the truck. I'm going to need a flathead screwdriver for this. And you just very carefully pry up on the piece like this. Be ready, because these will have a tendency to fly off. They're pretty tight on there. You can see we'll just take that off, and we will remove the gear, just like that. So at this point, what we can do, the whole truck will fall out like this. Alright, so I didn't show the process, but I've taken apart the truck here, and what I've done is I removed the top gear, the one that would go on the main part of the tower gear leading up to the worm. And I've removed this gear. Basically what I want to do is I'm going to be removing this top portion of material right here. Now this can be done two ways. You can use a knife to do this, however it's very difficult. This is engineering plastic, so it's pretty hard and pretty slippery to cut, not to mention it's covered in grease, which doesn't help. So I'm going to be removing all of this material with a rotary tool. I'm going to be taking my Dremel and I'm going to be cutting directly on top of this. Basically I want to match this flat portion here. I'm going to be eliminating this section here on both sides of the frame, on these pieces here, like this. So these top pieces I'm going to cut off. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reassemble the truck, and then we'll go from there. But it's a pretty straightforward process, so I'm not going to show that portion. You guys know how to do most of this stuff if you're watching this, honestly. And if any of you have a motor tool, you know how to use it. It's just a matter of being careful. Make sure to keep the cut as clean as possible. If you want to and you don't want to risk cutting into this portion here, what you can do is just cut above the little section here that you want to save, and then you can finish the area off with a file or a knife and then level it flush with the remaining section here. It's your call there. I'm pretty confident with this. I've done it a couple times before, so I'm just going to cut this piece off and then sand it smooth, and we'll come back and I will show you guys the results of this. So here are the frames after the modification. As you can see, the top portion is gone. I've cut that off. Basically what I've done, I've gone in with a file, sanded that flush. All this has to be flush. I've also roughed off the surface of the plastic itself, that way it'll accept glue later on when we get to the step. The next big thing here is I've completely degreased these parts. I've taken and soaked these in detergent, cleaned them off. I don't want any grease around these parts. I'll put a little bit of grease on the wheels later on. I probably won't show that step, but I just need to get the grease off this top portion. That way it'll accept glue a little bit better. You got to remember this engineering plastic is very touchy. It's very slippery. We want to eliminate that as much as possible for this next step here. Also, I've taken and cleaned all these parts up as well. So the gears that we'll be saving and all the little clips that put the truck back together. These are all pieces that we're going to be reusing as well. So obviously with this modification that we've done to this truck now, you can see I've refitted this back to the chassis. There's no way to reattach this truck. Right now it's just hanging. If I pick this up, it's going to fall right back out. So we need to basically create a new mount that's going to sit flush with the deck here. It's basically going to come up through this opening, and then we're going to have a piece that's going to come over, and it's going to be right on top of this open area right here. There's going to be just a little block. It's going to sit there and keep the truck centered. And I'll show you guys how to make all this. What I'm going to be using is some 040-inch styrene sheet, which I've cut to size, as you can see. I've cut a little area out of the styrene to make this little piece that's basically going to fit on top of the tower gear to basically cover up the opening. I've also taken some, let me see if I can get the package here. This is Evergreen bar stock here. This is 8610, number 8610. There's the size of the styrene I'm using, the particular strip. And I've cut 2 of these blocks to size, and I'm basically going to be taking these and gluing them onto this piece to get the correct height. Because we also got to meet the height, we got to bring what's left of the tower gear up to the same height as the deck that's remaining here. That way we can put a piece on top of it like this. That way it'll hold the truck in place and it'll be able to swivel freely. I'll show you how to make that. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to glue these pieces together, and then I'll trim them up and I'll show you the block, and then we'll basically install it on the truck here. So I'm going to be using to glue this down to start is a little bit of CA. This is going to be the main bond. I'm going to follow up and seal everything in place with some plastic cement to kind of weld everything together, but for now I'm just getting a good bead of CA down. This is just regular medium strength CA. You usually have about, say, 30 seconds before you have a pretty good permanent bond. So I'm going to put a good application of glue on that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece that we've cut. I've trimmed all the parts. I've glued the 2 pieces together with just regular plastic cement, and we're going to put this block in place. Now you need to be careful that it's completely centered on this truck. It's got to be exactly over that area, and it's got to be flush as well, as you can see. So as you're doing this, check everything and make sure that it's completely aligned. It has to be aligned for everything to work right. Got a little glue on my hand, but that's alright. Okay, so as you can see, it's in place. Just like that. That's the first step of the styrene fabrication for the rear truck here. So now that we've given this about 5 minutes to set up, I'm going to go ahead and seal it in place with a little plastic cement. I'm using Plastruct glue, by the way, in case anyone's wondering. It's the plastic weld. This is great for working with engineering plastic. It really is a great bonder. I've used this before and it works, like I said, very well. So I usually go with a pretty heavy application here. I'm going to go all the way around this piece, just like that, to glue it in place. So now that that's in, we're going to let this dry for a few hours. Matter of fact, in this case, overnight. I'm going to set it aside, and tomorrow I'll start putting on the pieces, and we can work on basically permanently reattaching the truck to the frame. So let's take a look at the fabricated pieces of styrene that I have here that I've made for this project. And keep in mind, these are going to vary between the SD40-2s and the SD45-2s. The SD45-2s are a little different, but the process is basically the same. It's just a matter of using different sizes of styrene. As for the SD40-2, which is what we're working on here, I'm using the 010-inch and 015-inch styrene sheet. The pieces that I fabricated, this top piece I've cut to size, and it's going to be sitting on top of our truck frame with the little block. This is what's going to hold the truck in place, as I'll show. This piece is going to be glued to the deck, and it's going to be what basically supports the false floor, which we're going to put on here to cover all this up in a second. These 2 pieces are just external bracing, and I'll show you where to install that next. Just like before, I'm using CA to do this. I'm not using anything else for the most part. I may use a little plastic cement here and there to secure some stuff, but for the most part, this is all a job for CA. We need it to be very durable here. So what I do, I put a little drop of glue on the area that we need to get covered by the new plate. I'm going to just stretch this out just a little bit, just like that. And I'm going to take the plate which you can see I've basically cut to an angle. The idea here is as the truck swivels, this piece has to be able to sit over these little areas that are cut out. It's going to sit on top of this and stay flat, but I don't want it to go over the edge because remember that right up here at this lip, this is where the shell is going to rest, so it can't interfere with that. So I've cut it in a way, and also we got to make sure that's actually the right way too. This is also very important. And when it sits up here, you can see it's going to basically match the contour of the frame no matter where it's positioned. So this is a very important part of this process, is to get the styrene piece cut exactly where you need it. And then basically I'm just going to put it on the glue and we'll set it in place. Don't move this as it's sitting, just leave it. So just like that, and then it'll sit nice and flat up there on that deck, and that's basically what's going to hold the truck in place, is this piece. The next thing we need to do is we're going to add the sections of strip along the top portion here. I'll go ahead and just use plastic cement for this. For the most part, this should be pretty good. But this is going to be the support strip right here. I'm just going to go ahead and add all that. And this is going to be on both sides. I may have to trim this down, it just depends. But this is going to be the support for the false floor that we're going to put in. It's going to raise the area up a little bit. Over this piece anyway. There we go. And we'll let that sit in place for a second as well. Put a bit more glue on this area, and then the next piece I'm going to install is some more 15-inch plate that's going to basically go in the center of this, like this. This doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but I do want it to kind of just be right between these two pieces. There we go. And now what we can do that we've got that, all that basically in place, we can go and put a little bit more glue over all this to seal everything in place. You can also use the CA for this if you want, but this will be fine for now. Okay, so we got a little bit more precise gluing to do here, and this is going to be another job for the CA. I'm going to take just a little drop on this area. I'm going to put it on these little pieces that we've glued to the deck here, on the supports. And then I'm going to just put a very small amount on the top of this deck plate. Keep most of this glue away from this little spot here. That little black spot is the actual little pin that fits into the hole that keeps the truck centered on the frame. So we want to make sure we don't get any glue near that. So if you do get glue near that little spot, push it away. This is extremely important. You don't want any glue getting in that little bit, anything that can interfere with the truck being able to swivel properly. Okay, so that's very important. Now that we've gotten that, all the glue on the deck, we're going to very carefully center this plate over the deck like this. Alright? Just like that. That's all there is to it. And as you can see, everything's nicely covered up. We can't see any of that, and that's exactly what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and put down just a little bit of pressure, just like this. And we're not going to touch this. We're just going to leave this dry for at least 15 minutes. I want everything to get really good and set up here. Remember, be very patient with steps like this. This is very important. You want to make sure this is a one-time job. Do it right the first time. So some time has passed here, and as you can see, we've went ahead, let this sit, and you can see it's completely flush with the deck now. All of our work is nicely covered up. So once I put the shell on, you won't be able to see any of this. We're going to paint all of this black. I won't show that step. You guys know how to do that. It's just basically a brush paint job. I'm just going to take some flat black acrylic, paint all this black, blend it all in. That way you won't be able to see any of this. So that's the big step out of the way.